China's had a lot of setbacks. It's had the stock market decline. It's had to lower its projections for the economy. Some people think that the actual GDP is lower than they say. They've now put themselves in the position where the U.S. is more actively pursuing freedom of navigation exercises in the South China Sea. They've got the initial ruling of the Court of Arbitration against them, the court saying it did have jurisdiction in China's dispute with the Philippines. There are a lot of indicators that things are not going that well for China, as I've written elsewhere, and others are, that a lot of the money that's held by the elites and the most wealthy in China is leaving China, and it's largely going to the West, to safe places. The International Transparency Organization estimated that something like $2.74 trillion left mainland China between, I think the dates were 2001 and 2011. And there have been updates in Bloomberg and elsewhere talking about money leaving since then. The Chinese mainlanders now are the largest single property buyers in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and God knows where else. There are now 274,000 mainland Chinese students in the United States, one-third of them beginning at the middle school or high school level. There are another 294,000 mainland students just in England, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And there are more if you add in Germany, France. I haven't looked at those figures. You can see that in Open Doors, which is the registry for international flows of international students worldwide. You could conclude that anyone with any money now, particularly with the crackdown on corruption in China, anyone in the leadership, is doing everything they can to create a golden parachute for themselves and their families, to get children ensconced overseas, particularly in Western democracies, to buy property in those countries and have their children educated in those countries. I always like to point out, because it's rude, that Xi Jinping's daughter, did she go to Beida? Did she go to Tsinghua, Beijing? No, she went to Harvard and graduated a couple of years ago.
So you would say China is actually in decline already?
I'm not saying it's in decline, but I'm saying that the rosy outlook that so many people may have, I think there's more difficulties in China than many people recognize. The biggest and the glossiest and rosiest pictures that are drawn of China are usually international investment companies and banks that want to get people to invest in China. And they talk about how there's still great deals and it's still got a great growth path. But all I'm saying, and this has been pointed out by David Shambaugh in the Wall Street Journal and others, that it's kind of odd that surveys of the wealthiest in China, there's been one done by Hurun, I think it's called, another one by Barclays Bank, shows that disproportionately large majorities, compared to other countries, largest numbers of wealthy people are planning to emigrate in the next 5 to 10 years. And you can look all this stuff up, but there's a lot of evidence out there. You don't see people emigrating to Russia. You don't see Germans emigrating that much to the United States. You don't see Americans that much. Some do.
Okay, but what would that tell us about the future of the world power ambitions that China is harboring?
Well, I would say that China's done a remarkable job, and it's had a wonderful period of growth, but that people tend to underestimate the challenges and the problems China faces. Almost all economists of any note who talk about China say that the problems with the economy that need to be addressed now are systemic, and those problems are related to the fact that the majority of the economy is still run by state-owned enterprises and by the government, and that government is ultimately making all the decisions about the economy, and that to change that threatens the control and the power of the Communist Party, which presents a huge dilemma. I mean, other countries which began as autocracies, whether South Korea, military dictatorship, Taiwan, military dictatorship, Singapore, eventually they liberalized more and more, at least economically, and gave more control of the economy to private enterprise to make things happen. And that's been true pretty much around the world, I think. You can make great progress for a short while. Even Taiwan did under dictators. But then there comes a point where that doesn't work so well anymore.